Hey everybody, welcome back to the I Play 2 podcast. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, current Florida Everblades play-by-play man Jake Maurice joins the show. Jake got his start doing play-by-play for both the Winnipeg Blues and the Winnipeg Freeze of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, where he spent 3 years honing his craft. From there, Jake joined the Everblades in the East Coast Hockey League and has been their radio and TV voice as the team has won the league championship in each of his first 2 seasons. His father, Paul Maurice, is the head coach of the Florida Panthers, who are the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and he is also the all-time winningest coach in Winnipeg Jets history. Jake, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, we're a good bit into the off season now for the Everblades. Things kind of slow right now. The odd player signing here and there, but for the most part, just enjoying the championships.
I gotta ask, you hold the Kelly Cup 1 week, a couple weeks later, you hold the Stanley Cup. What was that like?
That's a pretty cool experience to go on 2 deep playoff runs and have them both end the right way. Winning the championship on home ice is something I'll never forget. On the Everblades side, a historic season to three-peat as Kelly Cup champions, something no team has ever done in the ECHL before, something barely any teams have done at any level of any sport over the past few seasons, right? It's so hard to win 1 trophy, never mind 3 in a row. So being a part of that was an awesome experience. And then a couple weeks later, seeing my dad win his first Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers. Edmonton certainly made a little nerve-wracking there with games 4 through 6, but winning game 7 on home ice was unbelievable. Being on the ice with him, celebrating with him, all of that was just fantastic experience. And it gets better and better every day.
I saw a great picture of you holding the cup next to your dad. What was it like to get your hands on the Stanley Cup for the first time?
It's a good bit heavier than the Kelly Cup, a little bit wider too. So my muscle memory from the Kelly Cup, I had to readjust from that. But I mean, you're holding the ultimate piece of hockey history in your hands, right? Before I hoisted it up, I was looking around at some of the names that have been on there in the past. Hockey Hall of Famers, legends of the sport, the guys you grow up dreaming about, wishing you could be just like them. And now my dad's name is going to be right there with all of those guys.
When it comes to the Kelly Cup, what was your favorite moment aside from winning the cup in terms of calling the games, whether it's in the regular season or the playoffs?
So I've been doing this for 2 years, and there's all sorts of different memories and things that I didn't even think I'd ever see in my career. And I've gotten them in 2 years in the ECHL. I've done goalie fights. I've done goals from the red lines, on goalies, hat tricks, big upset comeback wins, all sorts of fun stuff here. But besides winning the 2 championships with the Everblades, from a broadcasting perspective, I have to say, one of my favorites would definitely be game 1 of the finals this year. It was an 8-1 win for our crew over the Kansas City Mavericks. And we were coming in, wasn't sure how it was going to go, right? Kansas City, they were the Brabham Cup champions, the best team in the regular season. They'd sort of rolled through the playoffs up until this point, and we just completely smacked them around in a game that was a lot of fun for our guys. A lot of different players getting involved was great to see. And then I really enjoyed the experience of coming back against Jacksonville from down 3-1 in the first round. I mean, we got shellacked 5-0 in game 4. We're down 3-1 in the series, and then we won game 5 on home ice. So the series is turning back to Jacksonville, and I was up there on the road with the team and just talking with the guys. You could just feel the calm around them, that with the way they won game 5, we won a 3-1, but it wasn't a 3-1 where we stole it or our goalie got us the game or anything. It was a 3-1 game where we were the better team. You could see it just sort of reset our group, and just interacting with them before game 6 and 7, which were on back-to-back nights. And it was an experience where you could feel the team's confidence. It bled into you. And then when you see it on the ice, you just sort of watch Jacksonville lose their confidence bit by bit, goal by goal that we were able to score. And by the time we scored that first goal in game 7, I kind of knew in my head we were going to be moving on.
What's it like to get to know some of the players off the ice, just in terms of personality and things like that? Because fans at home just get to see mostly on the ice. You get to kind of see behind the camera a little bit.
For the Everblades, our group was a lot of fun this year. A lot of really high quality character guys, great to interact with in the hotel, at restaurants, wherever you are on the road or in the arena, just talking with them. And it just made things a lot better when the team is filled with guys like that. Like, I'm going to them and I'm often the one involved in their least favorite part of the job, right? Talking with media, especially if we're talking with media after a loss where we had a chance to win a series and we didn't, or we lost a game in overtime like we did against Jacksonville in the opening round. And our guys were always able to handle it with class, with a high level of integrity, representing the organization really well. And it just makes everything a lot smoother and a lot more enjoyable when you're going towards the locker room and you know you're going to have a quick chat with a few guys and you're going to walk in and leave the room with a smile on your face.
For people who might be listening who are college kids and whatnot, what's your tip for breaking the ice, especially if it's with someone maybe you're meeting for the first time?
Well, very often if we get a guy, like we sign a guy, we trade him, usually we're not going to look to do media with them right away. We're going to give them a little bit of time to get down here, meet some of the hockey people first, right? Meet coach, meet a couple of your teammates so that you get a little bit settled in and you kind of have a bit of an idea of what it means to be an Everblade and what it's like being here. And then after that, I'll go just talk with them for a couple minutes. Hey, how are you doing? You like Florida? Done anything cool yet down here? Like we had a couple times. It's just the nature of the ECHL with player movement where we would add a guy the day of a game and he'd be playing that night. So that's an easy one, right? Just talk about hockey. So I think when you're going in to interview a guy like that, or you're looking to make a player comfortable, just making sure that you treat them like a person first and then deal with the hockey after.
For me, I always try to see if I have the time, if I can find anything in common with somebody, because I find sometimes that can be a pretty good icebreaker as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like that's what I was kind of saying with with the hockey thing, because I love hockey, they like hockey, so it's easy to just talk about that. A couple times in the past, we've had guys on our team from Manitoba, so those were always easy for me, right? Like, hey, I see you're from Oak Bank. I lived in Winnipeg for 8 years. I was really close to you. Yeah, I've been to Oak Bank before. Those are easy conversations. Or if a guy has lived in different places, like we had a guy who lived in the same hometown as my mother, so that's a conversation you can have. Or a guy who played at college where my good friend worked for the hockey team there, and talking, hey, do you know this guy? And if they do, you can talk with them about things like that. So finding something in common, maybe just finding something where you know that it gives them an opportunity to open up. If you're going to them right away and you're just trying to go straight into interview mode, they're going to kind of clam up and give you the hockey answer at best. Some of them might just give you one word answers. I've had those in the past before. So if you can find something that makes them realize that you want to actually talk to them first and that you can handle the interview stuff later, it helps them get into the flow of a conversation before you want them to get into the flow of an interview. Because as you know, Rob, talking with someone, just having a chat over lunch or whatever, it's a different type of discussion than when you have a microphone in someone's face and you're fishing for information and for quotes and to learn more about a team. But it's easier to get that kind of information naturally and in a way that conveys some level of emotion and care for what they're saying. It's easier to do that if you've had a conversation with them first and they're already used to talking to you in a relaxed way.
I agree. And it also, I think, builds a little bit of trust. And as you alluded to, pulls the shield down and makes them realize, okay, this person's all right. I can open up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And also being there to do anything that they need. Part of my job is as liaison between our team and third party media. And there's times where our players have requests involving that or different requests, like they're looking for something from the team shop. They're looking to connect with a fan for something that they saw online. So doing those little favors for the players or for coach or whatever also goes a long way, where it's, I'm going into the room and the guys know that I have their back for this. I'm not just going to throw them in front of whatever camera comes our way and make them do all this different stuff, that I'm going to be there for our guys when they need me to be.
For you as the liaison, what's a favorite connection that you made between a player and, let's say, a fan, a kid, something like that?
Well, to be completely honest, a lot of times with our fans, it's I just need to bring the player to the right place and they'll handle it themselves, because our guys this year were great at being self-starters when it came to talking with fans. Some of them, the returners, it's a little easier for them because they know some fans and they can start talking to some of the people they've already talked with before. Hey, how's your summer? Did you have a nice Christmas? Whatever is relevant for the discussion. But it was just nice to sit back and watch at events like our team Christmas party, the fan club spaghetti dinner. It was nice to just sit back and watch the guys. You bring them into the room, different fans turn their way, and already they're going up to our fans and talking to them. It's not the other way around all the time.
Because the fan bases for the East Coast League are smaller than the NHL just because of the lack of exposure nationally, can you talk a little bit about the Everblades fan base and just how loyal it is?
They're awesome. They show up every single night to Hertz Arena. They're always involved with us talking on social media. They know the game. They love the game. Our fans are the best in the ECHL. I've been to a number of other buildings, and don't get me wrong, the fan bases that I've seen are great. They get loud in their buildings. They can get rowdy, all that kind of stuff. But our fans are truly the best, and just how much they care about the team and appreciate all the hard work they put in, especially over the last 3 years, but really over the last 26 seasons to make hockey in Southwest Florida work. I've talked with some people who were fans when the team first came here back in the late 90s, and it was seen in the community. It was kind of expected to be a short-lived thing, right? Hockey in Southwest Florida at a time where hockey in Florida was barely anything. And the Everblades came in with a commitment to be great. We try to run our organization as close to an NHL outfit as possible. And I think we've done a great job of that. And it's made our fan base one that's loyal, one that's passionate, one that's actively involved, and one that is a pleasure to call games for them every single night.
What's your favorite road city to go to when you're calling games?
I did not make the trip up to Adirondack that our team did in December, but I did make the trip up in May, and I really enjoyed the ones up there in May. I mean, it's upstate New York at the spring summer meeting point, and the weather was excellent when I was up there. You drive around to the lakes, the Green Hills, so that was glorious. I really enjoyed Jacksonville as well, actually. They got a nice building there. You can scooter there pretty quickly. There's some stuff to do around the hotel, right? The worst places are the ones where you're in the hotel and there's nothing around, where you're going on the road and you're going to be sitting in the hotel when you're not at the arena. So even just having a couple things around makes it nice. So a place like Jacksonville, where there's the AAA baseball team pretty close to the arena. There's a nice river walk right near the hotel where you can go for a walk. There's some restaurants around where there's things to do, makes a big difference. And same with Glens Falls, where it's a very small town. You can walk around the whole thing in probably an hour. But there's a couple restaurants around, and if you can get a car or something, like I had a friend there, so I was able to drive around a little bit. You can drive to some nice places, go see some lakes, go into Vermont if you'd like, see some stuff over there. I haven't been everywhere in the ECHL, which kind of makes it hard to pinpoint a favorite. Right now, it'd probably be overall Jacksonville, but any city you go to, as long as there's something kind of close to the hotel, you can make it a fun trip.
I live about 30 minutes from the Allen American, and their arena for the ECHL here, where they're in a pretty competitive market with the Dallas Stars. And you want to talk family friendly and stuff like that, almost everything is catered to families and young kids. They do a pretty good job of it here.
That's how you make it work in the ECHL, right? Is you get young kids into the game, and we have a lot of young fans who show up pretty much every single game day, and they're always cheering loudly. They love the Blades. I always love seeing the kids there in the Blades outfits. And in the ECHL, it's a gate-driven league, right? It relies heavily on its ticket revenue. So bringing in families, some family nights, family-friendly theme nights, those are always important. We do a fairly good bit of that. I'm not surprised to hear that a team like Allen does that as well.
So you've mentioned that you're a little bit of a liaison for the players and you do play-by-play. What are some of your other roles for the Everblades? Because people who work in ECHL or minor league baseball tend to wear multiple hats.
My main 9 to 5 would be communications coordinator, running team communications, getting news out to our fans, talking with our social media guys so they know what's going out when, what sort of news is coming down the pipeline, especially at a time of year like this where there's not a whole lot going on, making sure that we're getting some stuff out to keep people coming to our social media pages, keep impressions, likes, all that kind of stuff that drives SEO, that helps drive ad revenue, keeping all that up. My other jobs are basically what I go in and get for the day. Some days I'll go in and got the pregame show or a team podcast. Other days it's, hey, Jake, can you help me out with these kind of stuff? One day I came in and they told me, we need you to deliver a bunch of pocket schedules to Naples. So one day where I was the delivery truck driver, or I'm going to appearances with our mascot to local businesses to help drive engagement there and making sure that things run smoothly from an operational perspective for those events. So it's basically kind of what you go in and get for the day, what needs to be done almost, plus communications, broadcasting. Certainly the play-by-play is my favorite part of it, but I also love that I don't go into the office for 8 hours a day, do the same thing 24/7, 365 every day of the year, right? I like that there's variety in my role.
It sounds like during the season you're pretty busy. When do you find time to sleep?
During the off season, it is an important thing when you're a play-by-play guy, learning how to sleep on buses and planes, getting those extra couple hours in. Very important to not maintain a sleep schedule, but make sure it doesn't get completely thrown into the dumpster. And then it's just about making sure you're not going to bed too late on your off days, right? Handling your health when you're in sports in such a driven business, a business where you're always operating on a lengthy schedule, right? Where you've got big days consistently throughout the year where you're working a lot. It's not always easy, but just even squeaking in time to do one thing, eat a healthy meal, get to the gym and get a great workout in, get maybe an extra hour of sleep, anything like that that you can do makes it so that you're able to keep going and enjoy the season more and more.
When you have the opportunity to squeak something in, how does that help you mentally in terms of not only just staying focused, but keeping a positive outlook?
Well, I always try to keep a positive mindset no matter what, even if you're not feeling great, even if the team's not doing great, whatever's going on, making sure that you're always showing up and being positive is a big thing for me. I think the important thing is just to always remember that I'm working in the field, I'm making good progress, driving towards my dream, that that's something worth smiling about. So maybe some days aren't as good as others. Maybe sometimes teams on a 3-game losing streak and you've got to get a couple interviews done and everyone's kind of feeling surly and you didn't sleep well, you didn't eat well, whatever. No matter what, when you're working, especially for an organization like the Everblades, when you're working in pro hockey, calling games, doing that kind of stuff, there's always something to feel good about. So can't really complain too much or for too long. And at the very least, when you live in Florida, anytime you walk outside the rink, usually it's nice and sunny and you can go to the beach and get a little R&R there.
I've been to Marco Island, which isn't too far away, I think, from where you
Oh,
are.
not
And
too
that's a
far at
pretty
all.
nice place.
Oh, yeah. We got a couple of people that work at our arena also live down there and they really enjoy taking some time over at Marco. You can go to Bonita, you can go to Fort Myers Beach. Some people I know they like to take quick drives up to Sarasota, which is about an hour north.
If you ever get a chance, you ought to go to Longboat Key. That's a beautiful beach. It's about 15 minutes west of Sarasota.
I've been to Longboat Key. Actually, my cousin's wife's family has a place out there, so I visited them once there.
What's it like to work in the same organization as your dad? Because there's not that many chances for that to happen. So, how much do you enjoy this opportunity?
I love it. I mean, as you said, there's not many opportunities to do something like this. Like, think how rare it is for there to be situations like the Sedin brothers or something like that. Obviously, we're not quite the same with that, but it's so much fun. It makes it easier to talk about how our respective teams are doing. Not that we would be wishing ill against each other's teams if the Blades were affiliated with a different organization. It just made things a lot more fun. Honestly, there really isn't any other way to put it.
Speaking of the affiliations, I read that Florida's moving their affiliation to Savannah.
The Charlotte Checkers were actually bought by the group that owns the Ghost Pirates, so that's why that shifted. It's just the nature of minor hockey. It's unfortunate for us because we really did enjoy the relationship with the Panthers, but we'll find another crew and we're just going to keep looking to handle things our way, the way we have over the last couple of years, and hopefully go for number 4.
Number 4 would be pretty cool. That puts you in pretty elite company with the Canadians and the Islanders and the NHL.
That would be putting us right there. I mean, we're already a historic team, which is crazy to think about being a part of that right now, but you always can be a little more historic.
One thing I'm kind of wondering as a play-by-play guy, and this is regardless of the sport, who are the play-by-play guys that when you watch, you're like, okay, he's doing this really well. I need to incorporate at least some of this in my style.
I like to leave my style untouched, but in terms of cadence, of managing energy, all that kind of stuff, I really enjoyed. He's retired now. Dennis Back, when he was calling the Winnipeg Jets games up there, he was one of the best ever. Steve Goldstein with the Panthers, Doug Plagans on the Panthers radio, Jack Michaels on the Oilers radio are all great. And then I've really, really enjoyed every game pretty much I've heard, whatever the sport, of Kenny Albert. I think he's one of the best ever. And sure, he's helped along by a fantastic voice, but he's not just a voice. He's always on top of it, always knows when to raise and lower his voice, when to let his color guy speak, when he needs to cut back in. He is the master of the broadcasting booth for sure.
I like Kenny. I also was a big fan of Doc Emmerich. I always thought Emmerich, with the way he called hockey games, you could close your eyes and just listen to him and know exactly what's happening.
For sure. And his vocabulary is unmatched.
And also one of the nicest people ever. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet Doc, but he is incredibly nice.
No, I never had the chance to meet Doc. I think his last 2 years in broadcasting were my first 2 years. And those were both COVID years. We were the Winnipeg Jets too, so we weren't getting a lot of national US attention. So it just never worked out that we ran into each other.
If you ever get the chance, that's worth a sit down.
There's a lot to pick there, I know. I would love to get the chance to talk with him.
Taking a step back here for a minute, how did your interest in play-by-play come to be?
Well, I wasn't really one of those guys who knew I wanted to do it from a young age. I knew I wanted to be involved in hockey. I knew I wanted to do something. I obviously knew at a certain age that it wasn't going to be a player, probably wasn't going to be a coach, anything like that. So I was considering writing at first, but then one day I got the call that the Blues needed a guy for a game because their guy had abruptly left for a different opportunity just before the season. They needed someone to basically fill in, and that's what I thought I was going to go do. Figured, hey, why not? I can say I've done it. It'd be kind of fun. So I drove out an hour west to Portage la Prairie to call my first game on September 20th, 2019. We lost that game 4-2, but it was so much fun. I wasn't any good, but I felt that there was something there where I really liked it. The Blues were willing to let me keep going as their broadcaster. And probably about a good bit into my third season with the Blues was when it kind of really hit me that it's not just something I really enjoy doing. It's something I'm really good at doing too, and that I can go wherever I want with this.
Early on, what do you feel were some of the most important lessons that you learned?
Be your own broadcaster, right? Don't steal lines from anyone else. Don't try and imitate anyone else, because if you're trying to imitate someone else, you're just going to end up being a worse, less authentic version of them. Preparedness is key. Knowing who's on the other team, who's on your team, how to pronounce the guys' names properly, who's doing well, who's in a little bit of a slump, different little facts about a guy's background, where he went to college, where he is from, height, weight, all that kind of stuff, just so you have different things to talk about. It's just all about professionalism, right? It's a professional broadcast. It's how you handle yourself in the booth is going to reflect on you as a worker, as an individual. So it's all about showing up every day and being as professional as possible. And that all comes down to the preparation and the authenticity of your broadcast.
Could you talk a little bit more about the research side of things? Because let's say either in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League or the East Coast Hockey League, information and background on players is a little bit harder to find than, let's say, someone who's playing in the NHL.
Sometimes some different players, you got to dig to find something good. Some guys, there really isn't a whole lot. So you kind of stick more to what they've done this season, right? This guy is on a 3-game goal streak or something like that when you don't have anything really worthwhile to talk about. Some guys, you'll save a different note for a different team, right? Like I never, ever have even come close to using all of my notes in one single game. Even like a game where we won 8-1 over Kansas City in game 1 of the finals with 6 minutes left, calling all of the action and getting everything perfect isn't nearly as important as it would be if this were a 2-2 game. So you have a little chance to slip in a couple more things here and there. But when it's a tight game, you got to focus on the action. So I think, remember that cliche, it's better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it. So it's just about having it, being ready, and finding different sources where you can dig. Like Elite Prospects is excellent. Hockey DB is great. And then if you can't find anything there, you go look into other places to try and find some good information, because there's always somewhere where you can find a little tidbit about someone that adds that extra bit of flavor to the broadcast.
Elite Prospects, that tells you who someone's related to, and perhaps you may not realize and be like, oh, I need to work that in at some point or another.
Yeah, for sure. You got to make sure though that you're not trying to force it in, that you're not going to miss something to get in a stat. When I was younger, when I was a younger broadcaster, when I was kind of first doing that full prep, I'd be more obsessed with getting it in, but it's not worth getting in that this guy is from Denver, Colorado, if it's going to make you miss a big play. So knowing when to add those kind of things and when to hold back, when to let your color guy talk about those kind of things, that's a very important part of the broadcasting journey that I've had to learn as well.
In terms of the analyst side of things, how long did it take you to understand how to work the analyst in?
Part of it is the same way as what we talked about earlier with the players. It's about talking with them first off the mic so you have an understanding of who they are, build a little bit of a chemistry with them, which is just as important for the two guys on the mic to have chemistry as it is for the guys on the ice to have good working chemistry. Just makes everything flow better. You have a little bit of rapport. You can go back and forth with each other when it's an opportune time. And talking with them about when do you like to jump in? What do you like to talk about? Do you have certain times or places where you feel you need to say something, just get in a little one-liner? Do you want to have more freedom to talk a little bit more? And then I'll tell them how I like to call the game, and we kind of work through it. And then part of it is also just practice. It's different with every different color guy, just as I'm certain they would say the same thing about play-by-play people, because that's just how it is. Everyone is a little different. Everyone will call the game a little differently, talk about the game a little bit differently. So you got to get to know who the person that you're calling the game with is and how they like to handle themselves behind the mic. And then from there, you just kind of got to go for it, right? It's just like the players on the ice. You can talk about practice and all that kind of stuff, video for hours on end, but at some point you got to play the games and learn the lessons there too.
For you as a play-by-play guy, how long does it take you to get comfortable with an analyst? I imagine the first period of the first game, there's still some kinks to work through.
Well, it's different with everyone. Like if I were to step into the booth with Eddie Olchuk right now, that's a lot different than stepping in with someone who's doing their first ever game as an analyst. It's just a level of comfort and professionalism, right? It would be different for each person, how long it would take. But I would say after a few games and after a few weeks of knowing someone, that usually I would be in a pretty good spot to know how to call a game with them and call it the right way.
Going back to growing up a little bit, obviously your dad's been involved with hockey for decades, but how did your love of hockey come to be?
Same way as every other kid, right? You play, you watch, you realize it's the best sport, it's the fastest sport ever, and it just goes from there. I mean, it's not really anything too complicated. I can't really remember from my really young days. There wasn't like one thing happened and now all of a sudden I'm all obsessed with hockey. It was just I grew up playing it and just kept falling in love with it more and more.
Because you lived in a couple of pretty competitive Canadian markets, Toronto for a couple of years, Winnipeg for a long time, watching how the media, I guess, would handle your dad, what lessons did you learn to help you talk to coaches and players?
Well, you learn what kind of questions are maybe best to hold back, how to handle someone differently after a loss versus after a win. I mean, when I was in Toronto, I was too young to understand that, and I wasn't thinking about my future career, so I didn't really pay attention then. In Winnipeg is when I kind of started to get into it more and more, particularly when I started broadcasting. It's just about knowing when to hold them, when to fold them, when to ask the tough question, when to leave it be for another day, and remembering always at the end of the day that you're talking to a person first.
Do you and your dad ever have conversations about interviews because you're on one side and he's on the other?
Yeah, we've had quite a few conversations about him. Always insightful, always love picking his brain about all sorts of things, hockey and non-hockey. But those kind of conversations are always really good for me and have been a big help in my career.
Do you think you being in the broadcast world has helped him maybe open up a little bit to the media? And I would say it'll be a little bit more transparent than a lot of coaches who just give the run-of-the-mill answers?
It for sure has. He's talked about it before in some of his interviews, actually, about how it's kind of, as I said, you're seeing a person, right? He's talked about it a different way, where you're not ripping a reporter who's trying to give you a quote. You're talking to someone who's trying to live their dream, feed their family. So I know for sure it has.
One thing I want to ask about, because I'm curious, is your dad coached in Russia for a year. Did you get a chance to go over and see him there?
No, I was too young for that. My mom went over there, but she was not bringing a 14-year-old to Magnitogorsk.
I know we chatted a little bit about this earlier, but when it comes to the travel and the ECHL, could you kind of talk a little bit more about it? Because a lot of those aren't necessarily plane rides, they can be bus rides.
Yeah, it's a lot of bus rides. It's a lot of sleeper buses. They're longer trips. We're not quite at the level of a place like the Canadian Junior Leagues, where some of those have 17-plus-hour bus rides. We're not quite there. Fortunately, the teams in our division are a little bit closer. Sometimes, if it's a little bit farther, like Adirondack and Kansas City in the Eastern Conference Finals and Finals, we'll fly there, but good amount of buses. And remember what I said, if you're going to be a broadcaster, you got to learn how to sleep on the road.
Where do you see yourself in, let's say, 10, 15 years in terms of the play-by-play world?
I for sure see myself in the National Hockey League. I mean, right now I'm all about the Everblades, but one day I fully believe in myself, my work ethic, my abilities, that I will be calling games in the NHL.
Would you prefer to do it for a team or would you like to do it for a network?
Oh, I don't know. As long as they're NHL games, I think I would enjoy it either way. There's benefits and drawbacks to both for sure. I've looked into both, but I'm focused on the process more, to be honest. Like, I'm not scouring every day looking for where I can leave the Everblades to go. No. As long as I'm with the Everblades, I'm 100% all in on being here in Florida. I'm really enjoying my time here so far, and I know I'm going to enjoy it even more for as long as I'm here. And I know that doing that is the best way for me to get to the NHL.
Jake, I want to thank you so much for coming on the I Play 2 podcast today. It was great to hear your stories working with the Everblades, winning the Kelly Cup. Continued success to you in your broadcast career and wherever it may lead you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure today.